Chapter 6, The Dog Bites Lu Dongbin. Work, immerse yourself in work like crazy, perhaps that's the best way to forget troubles. In front of patients, one must never work with emotions, otherwise, it will only make the patients worse. Fang Hao adhered to this principle and worked diligently. His mentor had just mentioned that the patient in bed 15 had no family to accompany him and had secretly thrown away the medicine. As it was a private room, nobody initially knew about it. When the mentor discovered the lack of improvement and examined the data, the clues were revealed. While examining the patient's body, Fang Hao also noticed that the elderly man had not eaten breakfast. The old man had suffered from mild strokes for many years, affecting the mobility of his legs. In the 4 years Fang Hao had worked there, the old man had been admitted to the hospital 8 times, almost once every 6 months. A week ago, the old man's leg had become numb again, and he had another stroke, prompting his admission for treatment and rehabilitation. Fang Hao went to the nurse station and asked the nurse in charge of the ward, "The condition of the patient in bed 15 has worsened." The nurse replied, "Yes. He didn't take the medicine, it's his own fault." Fang Hao asked, "Since his family didn't come today, did he not eat either?" The nurse scoffed, saying, "If I get married in the future, I'll definitely not have children. I'm afraid of ending up like him, children enjoying themselves outside while the parents suffer here." This morning, his legs were completely numb. When he went to the bathroom, your mentor had to help him. Think about it in a positive way. Look at room 5, the old lady is 90 years old, and her family comes in groups to take care of her. How fortunate. It was only then that Fang Hao understood, the old man had no family or even companionship. He went back to his office, ordered breakfast from the canteen, and took it to the old man. "Old Manly, I noticed you didn't have breakfast. If you continue like this, your nutrition won't keep up, and it won't be conducive to recovery." Fang Hao placed the breakfast on the counter and was about to lift the sideboard on the patient's bed. However, at that moment, the old man suddenly grabbed the breakfast and smashed it directly at Fang Hao. Fang Hao was caught off guard. The breakfast hit his face, as it was a thin porridge, splashing all over him. He was stunned, turned around in anger, and looked at the patient with incomprehension. When he examined him, he noticed that the patient had an empty stomach, clearly in a starving state. Fang Hao had kindly ordered him breakfast, but the old man didn't appreciate it. "If you don't appreciate it, just say you won't eat. Why do you have to throw the bought breakfast at someone? Even if a dog bites Lu Dongbin, should it also humiliate him? Doesn't a doctor have any dignity?" In an instant, an image flashed through Fang Hao's mind. He directly smashed the sideboard on the old man's head, causing his skull to burst, and blood spurted out like a fountain. He shuddered, suddenly feeling frightened. How could such thoughts arise? "I need to stay calm." Fang Hao turned his gaze, suppressed the dark thoughts, wiped the porridge off his face and mouth with his hand, and whispered, "I'm sorry." He put down the sideboard and squatted down to pick up the lunchbox, removing it. "Dr. Fang, what's wrong with you?" At the entrance of the ward, a passing nurse saw Fang Hao in this state and was shocked. "I'm fine, just a minor issue. I'll clean up in a moment. Call the cleaning lady to come and tidy up to prevent slipping and causing problems for the patient." Fang Hao smiled confidently. At this time, many wards were using medications, and family members were accompanying patients. In the corridor, apart from the nurses on duty, there were not many people. Otherwise, it would be embarrassing. The nurse came in, looked at the floor, and understood. She spoke in an unfriendly tone, saying, "Even if you don't eat, you shouldn't throw it at people. This is a hospital, and we, medical staff, are not your maids. You, get out." Ouch. Old Manly got angry and shouted at the nurse, but when he got excited, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his head. In his half-sitting position, he slumped backward. "Hey, what's wrong with you? I didn't do anything to you." The nurse panicked and quickly called for help. She was still in shock. If anything happened to the old man because of her words, she couldn't bear the responsibility. On this floor, the elderly patients either had heart problems or vascular issues, especially those who had suffered strokes. A slight stimulation could lead to blood vessel rupture, causing a cerebral hemorrhage. The consequences would be extremely critical. Earlier, after the incident where a patient unexpectedly spilled porridge on him, Dr. Fang returned to the general office. A middle-aged female doctor inside noticed the situation and came over to help, handing him a wet tissue. She said, "Fang, take it easy. I've experienced such friendly gestures from patients before. Luckily, it's just some porridge on your face and neck. Just take off your coat, and you'll be fine. Thank you, I'll be fine. It's nothing. Dr. Chen, Dr. Fang, something's wrong. The patient in bed 15 has fainted. A nurse rushed in. What? Let's go check. Dr. Fang grabbed a stethoscope and hurried to the room, instructing the nurse to call his mentor. Entering the room, the middle-aged female doctor saw the spilled porridge and realized that Dr. Fang had encountered the patient's unusual behavior. Mr. Li lay on the bed, eyes tightly shut, moaning in pain. He didn't seem well earlier, now, it's even worse. Karma hit him hard. Dr. Fang felt a fleeting sense of satisfaction but quickly focused on examining the patient. The middle-aged doctor checked the patient's pupils, heartbeat, and rhythm. Realizing the severity, she instructed the nurse to set up the electrocardiogram (ECG) monitor. Dr. Fang checked the pulse. Dr. Chen, the patient's pulse is very weak. I suspect there's bleeding in the brain. He may need surgery. Surgery? We need your mentor for that. Let me apply standard protection for him first. The middle-aged doctor wasn't qualified for brain surgery, and she knew it. While she was installing the patient's cardiac protection, he suddenly convulsed. Oh no, ventricular fibrillation. Get the defibrillator ready. We can't do it here, quickly move him to the emergency room. Prepare for defibrillation there. The middle-aged doctor was flustered but quickly gave instructions. I'll try manual chest compressions. Dr. Fang jumped onto the bed, feet on either side, crouching down to perform chest compressions manually, successfully restoring the patient's normal heart rhythm by the time they reached the makeshift resuscitation room. His mentor took over the treatment, frowning. There's bleeding in the brain, possibly from more than one site. We need to perform surgery immediately. Seeing that Dr. Fang wasn't wearing a coat, his mentor frowned, almost scolding him. There was no room for such disheveled behavior. At that moment, the director of the inpatient department entered. Dr. Fang's mentor briefly reported the observed condition and recommended immediate surgery. He also instructed the middle-aged doctor to brief the director on the previous events. The patient experienced ventricular fibrillation in the room, and Dr. Fang successfully performed manual defibrillation. The mentor's gaze softened a bit as he looked at Dr. Fang, who had already reviewed today's treatment records and noticed that no medication had been administered. He said, "Notify the patient's family. No matter how busy they are, someone must come." Meanwhile, the cardiac monitor next to them alarmed again. Not good, the patient is in ventricular fibrillation again. Chapter 7, I shouldn't be this unlucky. Not good, the patient is in ventricular fibrillation again. The sound was like a trumpet, immediately putting everyone present on edge. Don't panic. Defibrillation. 150 joules. The department head was present and personally performed the defibrillation. Thunk. Mr. Li was shocked, his body trembling, but his heartbeat didn't return. 250 joules. The department head frowned, sensing a challenging situation. The patient continued to fibrillate, and the situation became increasingly dangerous. Bang! The second shock, but Mr. Li still didn't wake up. The department head had sweat on his forehead. Looking at the clear defibrillation marks on the patient's chest, he hesitated. Another shock might push the patient over the edge. Now, he needed to use his professional judgment to determine whether another shock could lead to the patient's direct death. Again. 250 joules, prepare. The department head, with determination, gave the order again. Dr. Fang furrowed his brow. From the first shock to preparing for the third, more than 3 minutes had passed. The chances of success for the third shock were slim. At this moment, he didn't feel a sense of satisfaction about Mr. Li's poetic justice but rather a deep sense of guilt. If I hadn't bought him breakfast, he might not have been provoked, and he might not have burst a blood vessel. In that case, I share some responsibility. Dr. Fang felt he was exceptionally unlucky. Discovering his wife's infidelity yesterday, he now faced the possibility of being held accountable for today's work-related issues. I shouldn't be this unlucky. However, when he saw the third shock fail and the department head ready to give up, he said, "Department head, let me try artificial respiration one more time." A glimmer of surprise flashed in the department head's eyes, unnoticed by others. He said, "All right, Dr. Fang, you succeeded once before, give it another try." His mentor shot Dr. Fang a disapproving look, thinking, "You're too meddlesome." Within just a few minutes, 2 episodes of ventricular fibrillation and 3 failed defibrillations. The probability of reviving the patient is as great as your chances of being accepted by the City Health Bureau. However, he couldn't stop it. Dr. Fang had already begun chest compressions. 1 minute. 2 minutes. 3 minutes. 5 minutes passed, and the patient's heartbeat still hadn't recovered. "Dr. Fang, that's enough," the mentor advised. "Mentor, give me a bit more time. I feel he's about to have a heartbeat. Just a little longer." Dr. Fang dared not slack off, even with sweat on his face. He believed he could successfully revive the patient. His wife had been cheating on him for 4 years, and looking back, he had achieved almost nothing in those 4 years. Today, he must accomplish something. "I need to prove to myself that I can succeed. Old man, I bought porridge for you out of kindness. Even if you don't appreciate it, you can't die like this. Wake up for me." Dr. Fang encouraged himself, unaware that his resuscitation efforts seemed mad to onlookers. "Dr. Fang." The mentor's voice sounded stern. Why was this fool behaving like this today? But just then, a nurse exclaimed, "There's a heartbeat, he's back." Beep, beep. Everyone looked at the monitor, and the flat line on the heart monitor suddenly jumped, turning green. The flat line transformed into a sharp wave pattern. The department head, originally prepared to note the time for calculating the time of death, was taken aback. What a miracle. The mentor was also somewhat shocked. He hadn't expected Dr. Fang to successfully revive the patient's heartbeat. He decisively said, "Department head, let's hurry to the operating room. You follow along. Continue chest compressions all the way, without stopping." The department head came back to his senses, realizing that successful cardiac pacing was the basis of treatment, but the critical aspect depended on further resuscitation efforts. So, Dr. Fang once again got on the hospital bed, providing the elderly man with rhythmic chest compressions for cardiac resuscitation all the way until they reached the operating room. Only when the old man's heartbeat stabilized did Dr. Fang leave. Being of his rank, he wasn't qualified to be in the operating room, so he stayed outside. Suddenly, an intense desire to smoke overwhelmed him. Oddly enough, he used to smoke during college, and during the time he met Su Ro, he also smoked. Su Ro didn't mind, but she advised him not to smoke cheap cigarettes, as they were unpleasant. However, when they had children, although he didn't explicitly quit smoking, he barely smoked a few cigarettes a month, essentially cutting back. He checked his pockets and found them empty. Yet, in a high-pressure environment like a hospital, there was no shortage of smoking family members. At the corner of a safe staircase, a middle-aged man was smoking, looking troubled. "Brother, can I borrow one?" Dr. Fang approached, patting his pockets. "You're a doctor, right? I saw you perform cardiac pacing on that old man just now. You're very responsible, not bad." The middle-aged man handed Dr. Fang a cigarette and, seeing Dr. Fang's trembling hands, lit it for him. "Oh, waiting for surgery now. I hope he's okay." Dr. Fang took a couple of deep drags, feeling the familiar taste of the cigarette. Upon closer inspection, it was an old brand, his initiation into smoking. He had started sneaking cigarettes during breaks back when he was just learning to smoke. Su Ro wouldn't like this taste. She would find it distasteful, as this brand emitted a poor scent. But, what did he care if she liked it or not? Wait a minute, something's wrong here. Dr. Fang suddenly remembered that if a girl suddenly became friends or even lived with a man who smoked, she would most likely be disgusted by the fact that he smoked. Su Ro was the university belle, pure and delicate. Still, she didn't resist his smoking. She even allowed him to smoke in the bedroom as long as he didn't drop ashes on the bed or let the cigarette but touch the blanket. There's a problem here. Damn. That jerk smokes, and surely he and Su Ro did whatever they pleased in the bedroom, maybe even smoking while doing it. Su Ro didn't object. Perhaps she found men who smoked very cool and powerful. To avoid me suspecting her affairs, she allowed me to smoke and even smoked the same brand. After we got married, I worked night shifts for many days, leaving Su Ro alone at home. She must have let that jerk come over and fool around for a whole night. If I didn't smoke, but that man did, there would definitely be a lingering smell of smoke in the room. No matter how Su Ro cleaned, it wouldn't be possible to completely eliminate it. Since that man often came over, Su Ro was sure to overlook something. However, if I smoked in the bedroom as well, then the detail of smoking wouldn't be a cause for suspicion. Bastard. You really thought I was a fool, and I foolishly lived through 4 years. My head has been green for 4 years. And I knew nothing. Suro, you're a real scumbag, truly rotten. Chapter 8, Got into Trouble. Oh no. As Dr. Fang drifted into deep thought, he inadvertently let the burning cigarette but reach his fingers, jolting him awake. Young man, don't overthink it. Everyone has their own fate. That old man didn't look young. If he really passes away, it has nothing to do with you. The middle-aged man handed another cigarette to Dr. Fang, thinking that this young doctor, facing the stress of dealing with a patient's death, was feeling bewildered. Thanks, I'm fine. Dr. Fang connected the new cigarette with the burning one and then extinguished the old one. He then returned to the general office and found several leaders, including the deputy director, inquiring about the incident with the old man. The deputy director directly asked, Xiaofeng, did you have any verbal or physical conflicts with Li Wei? Dr. Fang, puzzled, replied, no. I followed the procedure, examined him, asked some basic questions, and didn't say much else. During the examination, he cooperated well, there was no conflict. Another short-haired female deputy director with glasses asked, then explain how you ended up with porridge thrown at you by him. Dr. Fang, still bewildered, said, I don't know. You can't be without a reason. Why did he target you with the porridge? Did you speak ill of him before? The female deputy director directly interrogated him. The eyes of the surrounding doctors and nurses looked at Dr. Fang with a complex expression. It was clear that they all knew the leaders wanted to pin the blame on him. Dr. Fang said, I didn't speak ill of him. Moreover, I bought him that porridge. During the previous examination, I found his stomach was empty, and he was weak. He hadn't had breakfast, so I ordered some for him. But I didn't expect him to react that way. The female deputy director's eyes lit up, and she sternly questioned, so you're saying you provoked Li Wei, causing him to get agitated? The deputy director said, whether a patient is hungry or not, only they know. Why did you take it upon yourself to arrange for him, especially when you don't know his taste? Why did you buy him food without permission? Another attending physician said, Xiaofeng, you acted on your own this time. Oh, I've got myself into trouble. Dr. Fang keenly sensed the taste of it. In the past, he wouldn't have thought people could be so malicious, but now, with his wife's infidelity, wearing a green hat for 4 years without his knowledge, he felt that human nature was inherently wicked. He quickly defended himself, saying, I didn't. Moreover, when I entered the room, he was already very agitated. His phone was left in a corner, and things on the bedside table were knocked over. The female deputy director said, did you anger him so much that he threw his phone? What I mean is, when I entered the room, he was already agitated. I don't know how his phone ended up in the corner. How can you prove that you didn't cause his agitation? And how can you prove that I did? When Dr. Fang retorted, the gazes from the deputy director and others changed noticeably. Fang Hao, what are you standing there for? I told you to correct the thesis for me. How long are you going to drag it out? Have it corrected by noon. At this moment, the mentor squeezed in from outside and pulled Fang Hao away. Dr. Su, Fang Hao is cooperating with our investigation. You can't take him away. The female director tried to block their way. What investigation? We are still rescuing the patient. Wait until he wakes up, and you can ask him then. The mentor glanced at the other doctors and nurses, saying, what are you all standing around for? Aren't there tasks at your posts? Go and watch, don't mess up. You can't afford the responsibility. He pulled Fang Hao out. The mentor didn't have a separate office, it was shared by 3 attending physicians, but the other 2 weren't present. He pointed to a computer and said to Fang Hao, get to work. Have it done by noon. Master, I didn't harm anyone. Fang Hao felt extremely wronged. A clear conscience needs no accuser. Concentrate, don't make mistakes in the correction. Otherwise, if it's published, your name will be on it, and it will damage your reputation. The mentor's tone was much milder, and he didn't mention the incident with the patient just now. Fang Hao felt frustrated, but his pride also rose. This time, he hadn't done anything wrong. It was absurd to be held responsible for trying to do a good deed by buying porridge for someone. He would rather leave the hospital. The thesis was long and bitter, making the correction challenging. Fang Hao needed to consult dictionaries, but he immersed himself in the task. The mentor watched as Fang Hao entered work mode, not saying much, just nodding slightly. 2 hours later, Fang Hao hadn't finished, but Su Ro sent a message, saying she couldn't leave her current situation and asked him to come to the hotel by car. He replied that he had hospital matters and couldn't make it. Then Su Ro called, but Fang Hao didn't answer, eventually shutting off his phone. Half an hour later, the mentor received a call and then said to Fang Hao, Li Wei has been successfully revived, and his condition is stable. Not only did he skip breakfast, but he hasn't had a meal since yesterday afternoon, he's only been drinking water. Fang Hao was momentarily stunned. From the mentor's relaxed expression, it was clear that he had been concerned about Li Wei's surgery. Feeling touched, Fang Hao said, Thank you, master. Oh, it's already past 1. It's almost lunchtime. Go eat, and in the afternoon, rest well at home. Your leave is still valid. The mentor asked Fang Hao to leave. Fang Hao went to the hospital canteen, had lunch, and then went straight home. Opening the garage door, he noticed his wife's car at home. Fang Hao was slightly taken aback. Didn't Su Ro say she was going to the company to handle some matters? Why is her car at home? She wouldn't lie to me, right? Making me think she went to the company, but actually, she stayed at home. That morning call was indeed about arranging a meeting at home. Fang Hao's breathing became noticeably rapid, feeling like his head was about to explode. He checked his wife's car. She regularly cleaned and maintained it, even fixing the smallest scratches promptly. The car, like her face, was essential. I last sat in this car. Oh God, I've never ridden in her car. In 4 years, I've never sat in my wife's car? Fang Hao began to feel a bit suffocated. In those 4 years, his life had been very routine, hospital, home, almost like clockwork. He used his father-in-law's old car for transportation, and every time the family went out, they used his car. He never thought about sitting in his wife's more beautiful car. His wife's beauty, high income, decent job, and the blissful family life were like gradually heating water with a frog in it, making Fang Hao not consider this discordant detail. He looked at the car's position and found that it hadn't moved all day. You texted me saying you were going to the company. You texted me saying you were coming to the hospital to pick me up. You texted me to go to the hotel. But you were with that scoundrel, having secret liaisons. You're shameless. Fang Hao angrily went upstairs, and as expected, the anti-theft door wasn't closed, and there was a man's voice in the house. There was indeed someone in the house. Chapter 9, Wife's Close Friend. Indeed, there was someone in the room, a man, a fair and slender stranger with glasses, looking very refined. This man was unfamiliar to Fang Hao. Of course, there was also a woman, a stunning beauty with long wavy hair, delicate features, and a slightly rounded face. She was wearing a white dress. It was Chen Mei. Big Handsome is back. It's been a while, and you're getting more handsome, with a bit of a melancholic aura, just like a movie star. Chen Mei stood up, opened her arms wide, and wanted to give Fang Hao a hug. Oh, I'm covered in the hospital's formaldehyde smell. Fang Hao could feel the unfriendly gaze from the unfamiliar man. He also noticed Su Ro's displeasure. There were fruits on the coffee table, and there were gifts nearby, presumably brought by Chen Mei. Fang Hao asked, and who is this gentleman? He was judging in his mind, is this person the scoundrel? The distance between the unfamiliar man and Su Ro sitting was quite far, and both of them seemed a bit tense. If there was a real affair between them, and they were currently pretending to be strangers, maintaining their act flawlessly, then their acting skills were remarkable. Su Ro didn't get up to greet him, didn't show the affectionate wife demeanor she had in the morning, completely appearing as a different person. She probably went to accompany the scoundrel in the morning and then ignored her husband at home. Fang Hao thought again, Su Ro's current behavior was the real representation of the past 4 years. She didn't need to cook, clean, take care of the kids, or move from the sofa, except to watch TV or play on her phone. In the bedroom, she was either sleeping or doing nothing. When he came home from work, he would greet her, but she didn't need to change her position. The morning's behavior was an exception. He's called Zhang Quan, my fiancé, a doctoral student. Chen Mei turned back to sit next to Zhang Quan, saying, he's Fang Hao. I told you Susu's husband is quite handsome. Don't you feel pressured when you see him? Zhang Quan raised his eyebrows, looking at Fang Hao, and said, Dr. Fang, nice to meet you. Although he said so, he didn't stand up or show any intention of shaking hands. His wrist revealed a silver exquisite watch, a Vacheron Constantine. Accommodating guests? Non-existent. He seemed to be the real host here. Educational background suppression? You may be handsomer, but I have knowledge, money, and a Vacheron Constantine watch. You can't look down on me. Fang Hao sensed the other's subtle thoughts, and he felt uncomfortable. It's strange. If he hadn't known about his wife's affair, the deception of 4 years, he wouldn't have thought about the evil nature of humanity or speculated about others' motives. In the past, he would have actively introduced himself and warmly welcomed his wife's friends. He would have treated them with kindness and hospitality. Now, as I think about it, that scoundrel might have been one of them, and I entertained him as if I were a turtle entertaining guests. Welcome anytime, the little wife is waiting for you. Nice to meet you. Make yourselves at home. I'll go wash my face. Entering the bathroom, I noticed dried porridge stains behind my ears, at the roots of my hair, and on my neck. I decided to take a shower. Fetch the fruits, Hao. As soon as I stepped out, Suro was bossing me around, using the same tone she had used for the past 4 years. No longer calling me husband, she addressed me by my name in front of others. Was she trying to assert her dominance as the mistress of the house? Well, I still need to ask Chenmei about what happened back then, but I shouldn't make the atmosphere too tense. I'll wash. Hao walked over to wash the fruits. Chenmei gave Suro a thumbs up, saying, well done, hubby. Teach me next time. Zhengguan's motuisha. He looked at Hao and added a touch of sympathy and disdain. Suro's expression remained pleased as she simply said, sure. Hao was internally riding a grass-mud horse, but he endured it. After washing the fruits, he noticed Zhengguan sneakily staring at Suro. Observing Suro and Chenmei, both beautiful women, he found Suro more stunning. Suro had a delicate and well-proportioned figure, perfect in every aspect. Chenmei, on the other hand, had a more voluptuous baby-fat figure, resembling a type that flourishes in marriage. Suro exuded a noble and elegant temperament, sitting with a dignified posture like a lady. In contrast, Chenmei was more casual, talkative, with a mellifluous voice and a sense of humor. Zhengguan seemed reserved, not talking much. Hao half-heartedly engaged in the conversation. His mind wasn't fully present. He simply said, I have a night shift tonight, so I'll go rest. We should get going too. I'll send the invitation over later. Oh, one more thing, Susu, I want Hao to be my best man. Hope you don't mind. Zhengguan, the same goes for you. Chenmei suddenly brought up this topic, smiling at Hao as if it were an announcement rather than a discussion. Shuro immediately frowned. Zhengguan's expression froze for a moment, then he shrugged, maintaining a smile, your call. Hao, come, it's settled. Chenmei extended her hand to shake hands with Hao. I'm not suitable. I have a wife and child. I can't be your best man. Don't refuse. There's no one on Zhengguan's side who can match your looks. It's settled then. If there's a bouquet toss, I just won't find you. Haha. Chenmei directly grabbed Hao's hand, saying, big man, be straightforward. Since you're coming anyway, just stand in the groomsman lineup. No big deal. Alright. I agree. Hao glanced at Suro. Before she could say anything, he preemptively accepted, asserting himself as a big man. You treacherous woman, you probably wanted to refuse, but now that I know you don't love me, lied to me for 4 years, you won't trick me again. He added, send me the details. I'll arrange my schedule. What's your phone number? He took this opportunity to ask for Chenmei's number. In front of Suro and Zhengguan, it wasn't appropriate to bring up the details of their wedding 4 years ago. It would be better to arrange a private meeting and inquire about it then. Chenmei didn't seem to have other intentions, just giving him a number to save. Hao took out his phone to save the number. Zhengguan extended his hand to shake hands with Hao, saying, thanks in advance. No trouble at all. Wishing you both happiness in advance. Hao politely responded. He noticed that when Zhengguan shook hands with Suro, his thumb subtly circled around the base of Suro's hand. Chapter 10, It's not yet time to reveal everything. When Zhengguan deliberately circled his thumb on his wife's hand during their handshake, it ignited a surge of anger in Fang Hao. He was tempted to rush forward and punch Zhengguan, but he resisted, knowing the risks involved. If he were to strike Zhengguan, it would be a declaration of war. If Zhengguan turned out not to be the scoundrel he suspected, and he ended his marriage, he could lose everything, including the custody of his son. Zhengguan might even frame him for intentional harm, and with Suro's family influence, they could easily lock him up for 2 weeks. Staying in confinement for 2 weeks would give Su Ro and that scoundrel plenty of time for manipulation, possibly ruining him completely. Once divorced, Su Ro and Fang Hao would have no connection, and Fang Hao would lose any right to confront the scoundrel. Even if he found him, what could he do? Evidence was crucial, preferably catching them in the act of adultery. After being betrayed for 4 years, this seemingly minor detail today was merely the tip of the iceberg. He had to endure. Fang Hao didn't see them off but instead went inside. He noticed the teacup in front of Zhang Quan's seat hadn't been touched. His phone rang. It was a nurse from the hospital, the same one who had clashed with Li Wei in words. She said, "Fang Hao, how's Li Wei doing? I'm too scared to go to work now. I took the afternoon off. Let's meet somewhere and talk." My mentor said Li Wei has been stabilized, no life-threatening issues. But he can't speak yet. We won't let him see anyone to avoid further agitation. He'll be placed in a special care area. Fang Hao, did you really have a quarrel with Li Wei, and then he threw porridge at you? That's not true. I didn't quarrel with him. Don't believe everything you hear. Why would Li Wei throw porridge at you, then? I don't know. Fang Hao hung up the phone, furrowing his brow. It was evident that he couldn't explain this situation. Indeed, why would Li Wei throw porridge at him? He had kindly bought him porridge since Li Wei hadn't eaten anything. Li Wei didn't appreciate it. Why attack him? With marital infidelity at home and unsatisfactory work outside, Fang Hao felt a sense of frustration. After waiting for a long time and not seeing his wife return, he decided not to bother. He drifted into a deep sleep, unaware of how much time had passed. In a daze, he felt something soft and warm rubbing against his face. Opening his eyes, he discovered it was his daughter, Fang Jiejia. "Daddy, you're awake. I'll give Daddy a kiss. Daddy, get up quickly." Fang Jiejia's crisp and tender voice was full of healing power, making Fang Hao harbor deep affection for her. Checking the time, he realized it was already 6 o'clock. He had slept for 4 or 5 hours. He asked, "Jiejia, who brought you back?" "Mom did." Mom scolded Tian Tian. Tian Tian wet the bed at school. "So embarrassing. But I don't wet the bed." Fang Jiejia toweled a bit. "You're amazing. You go out first. I'll change my clothes and make dinner for you," Fang Hao casually said, flipping open his phone. The annoying nurse and some colleagues were sending messages, inquiring about his conflict with Li Wei. He sensed that these people probably wanted to shift blame onto him. Human nature is inherently wicked. His mentor also sent him a message, asking him not to go to work at the hospital these days but instead use the computer at home to handle some data. Feeling uneasy, Fang Hao called his mentor and asked, "Mentor, do I still need to take responsibility for the hospital situation?" His mentor replied, "No conclusions have been drawn yet. But the patient's family has arrived, and some people said things they shouldn't have, agitating the patient's family. You know how difficult doctor-patient relationships are, it's best to cool things down." Fang Hao felt both angry and disappointed. He could foresee impending consequences, disciplinary action from the hospital. No matter what, he had bought porridge for Li Wei. He asked, "Mentor, did I really make a mistake?" His mentor hesitated on the other end before saying, "So, did you have a quarrel with Li Wei, upsetting his emotions?" "No." "Since you didn't, then insist that you haven't done anything wrong. Don't overthink about baseless things." The mentor hung up the phone. "Mentor, you told me to stick to principles, but realistically, can I really lose this job? Without this job, what else can I do? With a divorce looming and potential unemployment, the custody battle for my child will be heavily against me." Fang Hao is feeling a bit overwhelmed. Fang Hao went outside and found Su Ro standing at the bathroom door, while his son was inside crying and washing his pants. This little rascal actually wet his pants, isn't he asking for trouble? Well, he's my son. If I scold him now, the consequences will be severe. This little guy usually sticks to his mom, right? If I make him notice his mom's flaws now, when we divorce, he might lean more towards me. Fang Hao pretended not to see and went to prepare dinner. Fang Hao wasn't in a hurry to expose the hypocrisy of this marriage. For now, they were still a family. He pretended to be the usual family cook, cleaning the kitchen and living room after dinner. After finishing his chores, he entered the bedroom and saw Su Ro chatting on WeChat with someone. As he approached, she quickly closed a private chat window and entered the company group to grab a red envelope. Afterward, she sent a voice message to thank someone. Judging by her tone, it was a colleague, probably an older sister in their company. Acting. Keep pretending. Fang Hao found it a bit disgusting. He changed his clothes and took Fang Tiantian out. In the garage, Fang Tiantian ran to pull the door of Suro's car, but it was locked. He then tried the door of the old car, only to find it locked too. "Daddy, did you forget the keys? Come here." Fang Hao patted the back seat of the electric scooter, but he saw Fang Tiantian backing away, his face showing unmistakable disdain. "You little brat, if you don't come, I'll go eat KFC by myself." Fang Tiantian still couldn't resist the temptation of KFC, so he reluctantly hopped on the back seat of the electric scooter. In the KFC restaurant, Fang Hao watched his son devour the food. Waves of heartache swept over him. It wasn't that he couldn't afford such fast food, it was Suro who insisted that it was unhealthy and shouldn't be eaten. "You unfaithful woman, don't you know that cheating is bad? What have you been doing these 4 years?" A hypocritical woman with inconsistent actions. Leaning forward a bit, Fang Hao asked, Tian, do you like daddy more or mommy more?" "Mommy. Little rascal." Fang Hao was speechless. Offering a KFC meal couldn't buy his son's favor. He asked, "Who treats you better, daddy or mommy?" "Mommy." "If daddy and mommy get divorced, who would you choose, daddy or mommy?" "Mommy." "You little rascal, if it weren't for the paternity test proving you're my son, I'd really doubt you're my blood." Actually siding with that unfaithful woman. Fang Hao didn't want to speak, he just wanted to be quiet. "Daddy, what is a divorce?"